Hey everybody, happy Wednesday. We'll go ahead and get started in a few minutes. Welcome and grab a beverage, get comfortable, and we'll get started shortly.
Perfect. Thanks, Nathan. I hope everyone is as caffeinated as I am because I am on my second venti cold brew of the day, and that means dad jokes, and they're not good dad jokes. So hopefully everyone's caffeinated like myself. If you are just joining us, if you just want to, so one, you can find the chat, but two, also, I'm just kind of curious where anyone that is filing in virtually, where you're coming from. So if you don't mind just letting us know where you're at, maybe what you teach or what your role is, and where you're at. And we'll get started in just a second.
Hi everybody, we're going to go ahead and give it another 60 seconds here to let anybody else filter in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Please feel free to use the chat functionality here liberally throughout the course of our time together. Go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know where you're from, what your role is in your district, and we'll go ahead and get started here in about another 35, 40 seconds.
Rochester. Near Rochester.
Near Rochester, I like that. I lived in Fairport for quite a while, just outside of Rochester, New York. Fun fact of the day.
I've hung out with a gentleman here on this call, Keenan, in Rochester many a times.
Many a times.
So,
Great.
even though I'm not from there, I can tell you where all the good food's at.
All right, welcome everybody. Happy Wednesday. We'll go ahead and get started. My name's Nathan Tolles. I work with school districts and educators throughout Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York State. We've got a team of representatives here, including James Oliver, who's one of our STEM product specialists. Today, we're going to be diving into our brand new progress monitoring and benchmarking math assessment suite called mCLASS Math. We're really excited to spend some time showcasing this to everybody. If you have questions throughout the course of the webinar, please feel free to use the chat feature liberally. We'll go ahead and respond to those questions as we can. We're super excited to have you all with us today. Just as a quick reminder, there's accessibility features built into the webinar itself. And then we are going to be recording the session as well. And that'll be available for anybody who was not able to join us today, or if you want to share this recording with other stakeholders in your district. We'll reserve time to answer your questions and have communications and conversations at the end of the webinar. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and let James get going. So James, welcome and take it away.
I appreciate it. And you see my screen there okay, Nathan? Are we sharing okay here?
It looks like we may have stopped sharing, James.
Let's make sure we're sharing correctly. Let's do that again.
All right, I think we're good to go, James.
Appreciate you. Awesome. Happy Wednesday. If you didn't get the warning now, I'm going to give you just one more warning that I am highly caffeinated. So I will do my best to not speak super fast, but also make sure that I limit my poor jokes to maybe 2 or 3. I think some of my colleagues here on the call are going to be very appreciative of the limited dad jokes. But if you did not hear, Nathan is correct. We are here talking about mCLASS Math. And I just have to give a shout out to Tony, who just jumped in the chat because I was just in Harrisburg not too long ago. And that's the squirrel for you right there. So if you did not know, we were talking mCLASS Math today, and some of the terminology that you just heard, mCLASS, that might sound familiar to some of you. Some of you might be familiar with mCLASS in our DIBELS 8 edition. And so that is the literacy side of that screener and benchmarking tool. And today we're going to focus more on the math side. So yes, this is similar, but different. And we want to make sure that if you are familiar with mCLASS and the DIBELS 8 system, that you understand those nuances and how they are different. So if you are someone that is already familiar with that side, just know you will see some similarities and you will see a lot of differences as well. So let's go ahead and jump right in and really talk about what mCLASS and this assessment suite can do. Because we're really combining two important things. One, we're really highlighting students' needs through an asset-based approach. And that's something that's very new when we think about benchmarking students in a math setting. Asset-based assessments is something that is very difficult to find, and it's very difficult to do. And we've been spending years and years in the classroom making sure that we have a true asset-based approach. But the other thing that's really important that you'll notice on this screen is that we're also going to be able to look into student thinking. And so this is going to be something that is unique to mCLASS. So in our time today, these are the three big buckets that I hope that you walk away with. One, that we're going to be able to do what every other assessment system can do. And that is give you true performance level data, giving you indicators on maybe how students might track towards maybe state assessments. We're going to be able to do that. But there's also going to be a whole other side to this that no one else can do that mCLASS can. And so that's where this student understanding is going to come into play, deeper insights. That second check mark, I think, is very valuable. I think back to when I was in the classroom administering benchmark assessments. Oftentimes, those assessments took more than one class period. A lot of instructional minutes were taken away to administer these types of assessments. So I'm assuming something that might be intriguing to you on this screen is the fact that it says in less time. Now I'm going to hold that in my back pocket and really talk about how much time here in just a moment. But this is going to be a lot less of a lift, and it's going to give you back a lot more time to be able to either use your differentiated suites, or if you're looking for more RTI time or just more core instructional minutes, we're going to be able to give that back to you with mCLASS Math. And last but not least, if you are thinking, how could this, support me with what I'm already using in my core? Or if you're really curious about mCLASS and how it works with Amplify's core and Amplify Desmos Math, the key here is that it's going to be able to integrate with your core program and be able to provide instructional insights and recommendations, whether you're using an Amplify core math program or you already have a different core in place. So what is this benchmarking tool? I'm really just building the excitement without getting to go in the weeds. So let's get in the weeds a little bit. First, it is all digital. So unlike our DIBELS side, everything that is done in mCLASS Math is done on a device. And I will tell you, it is grade level appropriate, and it has been field tested for years to make sure that each grade level is able to actually do these assessments on a device. That is a huge piece when we think about getting an assessment to be done quicker, but it's also going to give you student insights even faster than having to look at recording forms or to actually grade a benchmarking assessment. Now, it is not a timed assessment, but I did tell you it does take far less time. And the reason is because of the types of questions that we're asking. And I'm going to show you some examples of that in just a second, but we are actually able to get far more info, far deeper into the students' thoughts and thinking and reasoning and what they might know and not know because of the types of questions that we're asking. And you'll notice that there are instructional next steps and progress monitoring tied to this assessment. So after you administer something like a beginning of year assessment, you are able to then progress monitor students based on the data that you're getting so that you continue to see growth for those students that might need additional supports based on that beginning of year assessment. And if you are curious, and something that we can provide here at Amplify, we are able to provide all the essential math that is covered within the skills and concepts on each assessment for each grade level. So if you're curious what we're addressing on each one of those assessments, we do have all that documentation that we can provide to you. So if you were to look at the scope of a year in mCLASS Math, we're really targeting those critical grade level skills to predict success by the end of the year. So there is those 3 benchmarking assessments for each grade level. You have your beginning of year assessment, your mid-year assessment, and end of year assessment. And I mentioned it's not timed, but it is roughly taking about 30 minutes on average per student. Far less questions, much more depth of knowledge around how each student understands those questions. Again, because of the type of questions we're asking. And you're going to get to see that. Now, based on the data that we get between the BOY and MOI, we're going to be able to progress monitor those students with multiple forms so that we can show growth between those benchmarks. Now, let's get into what makes us so unique, what makes us different, because I think what you see here on the screen is pretty common for most benchmark assessments, right? You have your BOI, MOI, and EOI, and there's a lot of assessments out there where you can progress monitor students, and this will all give you that student level performance data. Like I said earlier, off to the right, student thinking, this is something no one else can do. So again, you're going to get that performance level data, how students did on ratios and proportionality. What is their depth of knowledge around that standard, right? We're going to be able to provide that for you. The student thinking, this is where it gets really interesting. So I'm going to show you some real data. And what I'm going to put here on the screen, this is an actual problem that we gave students, but notice a few things on here. One, it's multiple choice. So I know I see a lot of you are starting to use the chat here. I'm kind of curious, how many students do you think got this question correct when we gave it to them? And just give me a percentage. And I should mention about 3,000 students actually answered this question. So just how many do you think got it right based on this one question that we put in front of them? And if you don't want to put it in the chat, I'll just give it about 8 seconds, but make a guess. This is high school students that took this question on a typical benchmarking assessment. So Tony's saying about 2,000. Okay, so it's a pretty good chunk, right? A pretty good percentage. 45% from Aaron, 75 from Monica. Brent's saying about 50% got it right. Now, if we were just to do some simple math here, and I were just to put random options for A, B, C, and D, no matter what, we technically have a 1 in 4 or 25% chance of getting it right. So 80% of the students actually got this question right when we asked high school students. Now, here's what's really comical. What do you think happened when we stripped the A, B, C, and D away and we made it open response? Now, because of time, I'm just going to kind of jump forward here. We gave this same assessment to these same 3,000 high school students the next year. So they actually should have a deeper knowledge around linear equations, linear functions. They should know a lot more about slope. Aaron, you were predicting. You're right. So here's what's incredible. The same students took the same question a year later, and 45% got it right. So what it's saying to us is there is a lot of disparaging data that is coming from a multiple choice assessment. So I'm going to make it a lot easier for you, especially if you are all looking at this type of math and saying, oh my gosh, I don't remember how to do it. Let's make it much simpler. Let's look at real data from a kindergarten mCLASS assessment. Now you'll notice a few things here. One, there is text-to-speech functionality. It can read to them. It does sound like a student is reading to them. And here we're just asking students, roughly just a little more than 1,400 students. We asked them to just tell us how many flowers are there. Now, here's what's really neat. When we left it open response, we received 166 unique responses. And there's something that's very important here before I show you this next image. I don't want you to think that we're using AI or machine learning to take all these responses and filter them. We actually have real humans that have looked at for years now all the different types of responses, and we still get new ones that we have to filter. But this is showing you the creativity and the uniqueness of how students look at every single item. So I'm going to put something up on the screen and digest it for a second. This is 4 actual students, real students, and their answers to how many flowers they see. Now, it might take you a second, and I can help if you if you haven't taught primary before, but I personally understand all 4 answers. If we were to start with Misty, Misty's got a pretty great answer. 6 flowers. Now, I can come up with 3 different reasons why someone might say 7. Kevin, for example, it looks like he's counting on, which is something early on in kindergarten we're actually teaching, right? And so counting on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, where Sullivan is counting by ones, not by ones, but actually counting 1, 1, 1, right? And what this is actually showing us is a lot of different skills that are acquired early on in kindergarten where students are at. So it's a very simple example, but if I were just to show you, go back to that traditional method, maybe it's a 5th or 6th grade standard. This is traditionally what we would see on that assessment in any other program. Every other program looks like this. Here's what it looks like in mCLASS math. Just another example, a different grade band for you to see. So some key takeaways here. On the mCLASS assessment, they can use tools. They could draw on here. They could break apart or use, their drawing tools. They might be able to use different manipulatives based on the question type. They can use words. They can put mixed numbers in here. They can put improper fractions in here. And we will actually be able to sort the student's depth of understanding based on the question type. So there's a group called Math Annex for years that has been doing this work in the background, looking at all of these different data points and making sure that we understand student thinking so that we actually can take that thinking and provide instructional next steps real time. So again, all of this will filter into what kind of skills we're requiring from students. So you'll see the different types of domains in each grade level, and we can always provide this to you if you ever want to see what we're assessing at each grade level. But then again, as soon as we give that beginning of year benchmarking assessment, we can then identify students based on their composite scores that we get. We can actually target those tier 2, tier 3 groups with progress monitoring. And it's all going to be based on the data that we receive in our reporting suite. So I'm going to show you that in just a second. What I'd love to do is actually go into our platform. I think it's much better than just clicking through slides and show you exactly what it would look like for you if you had mCLASS math and you're looking at it from the lens of a teacher, because I want you to see the ease of use. So the first thing that I'm going to do is actually click right into the platform, and you can see that here's my mCLASS math. And before I actually go into the program, I did mention something earlier. Maybe you're using a different core program. I'm not going to name them, but I'm going to click on here just as an example. Maybe you're using a different core and you are looking for a strong benchmarking and progress monitoring assessment. You'll notice when I go in here that there are different types of core programs that we will support, and we continue to add more so that your mCLASS can truly help you with your instructional next steps based on the core that you're using. So if you're not using, which we hope you would, use our Amplify Desmos math program, which is really, they all talk to each other, I would say. It's a complete math suite. But if you're not using Amplify Desmos math, or if you're looking at that maybe in a year or two, just know this would work flawlessly, seamlessly with that suite. Now, what I'm going to actually do is again, kind of click through this as though I am a teacher. So if I was, let's just say, a 3rd grade teacher, I could see all of my assessments in one place. And when I click on 3rd grade, a few things are going to pop up here. And I'm going to zoom into the very first one. Notice it says grade 3 onboarding for mCLASS assessments. So I have 3 daughters at home, and I don't know about you, but when it was like a mid-year assessment at their school, it was really weird. I always they started to become sick all of a sudden. Like it was like, oh my gosh, think I have a bug and I don't want to go to school. And I started to realize it was because those mid-year assessments were coming up and they were being benchmarked. And I often remembered because sometimes it would take a day or two to get through them because of the types of questions that they were being asked. I will actually never forget my third grade or my first grade daughter walking up to her teacher and saying, I don't know how to do this item. And her teacher saying, it's okay, you're going to get that one wrong and the next one wrong, and maybe even the one after that wrong until it figures out where you're at. So I emailed that teacher and I asked her what was put in front of my daughter. And it was actually dividing mixed numbers in a first grade classroom. And that type of adaptive assessment really does make students not want to take a benchmarking assessment because there's so many items they actually don't even know how to do or have ever even been introduced to. So one thing I want to point out here is this onboarding assessment is something that we always recommend teachers do at the beginning of the year. It shows them how to write a fraction appropriately if they're starting to have to use fractions. It helps them know where all the buttons are and how to use the text to speech. And so this is a great way to ease the anxiety of students taking these assessments. Now, what I'm going to go ahead and do is just click on the beginning of year benchmark assessment, and you will see for that teacher, if I had my class ready to go, they're all rostered, I could go ahead and assign it to my class or to specific students. And I have what I think is really important, a nice bird's eye view of every single item in the assessment. And so I know we showed some examples and screenshots, but I'm just going to go ahead and click on a few here in the third grade benchmarking assessment. A few things to take note of. Again, visual, colorful. It's not that black and white traditional look to a benchmarking assessment. Again, not every single item is open response, but a majority of them are. There is some multiple choice if it just makes sense for that. If we need a quick yes or no, maybe they need to understand distributive property in the definition, for example. Here, you can see it's a great example of that open-ended response. And we're probably going to see a wide range of responses to a question like this. As I'm clicking through this assessment, just notice the different types of questions. Here's a great example of us just filling in a table with different patterns. And so this is the third grade beginning of year benchmark assessment. Once a teacher pushes this out or assigns this to students, everything is immediately going to go into a reporting suite. And this is what I think is really powerful. I don't know about you, but when I would administer benchmark assessments, I would get some quantile, quartile score. I'd print off a piece of paper, I'd send it to the parents, and I would move on because I really didn't have any instructional next steps or now what's based on that assessment. So I'm going to go ahead into our reporting suite, and you're going to see right here, this is a kindergarten example. And if you're like, James, why are we looking at kindergarten? Well, it was a lot easier for me to do a lot of fake data if I was asked to do kindergarten. So that's why we're looking at kindergarten, but it doesn't matter which grade we're looking at. Everything that you see here, it would look and feel the same regardless of grade. And you can see the domains that were assessed and assessed on the beginning of your assessment. And as I scroll down, you're going to see that I, as a teacher, could filter. So maybe I want to see all the students and where they fell within their composite score. So you can see that I have my well below, below, my benchmarking, and I even have my above level students. And you might see some domains say no interpretation. That's because we didn't have enough items to assess them on that specific domain. And again, this is kindergarten, so certain domains that makes even more sense, right? But you can kind of get a sense of exactly how this sits in the reporting suite. And again, back to my Dibbles 8 users, this should look very familiar to you. And so I'm going to scroll back up, and there's a few things that I think are really important. One, this is something that you probably have seen in other benchmarking assessments, like we've said. getting that score and really understanding where my students are at on a 4 level plane, right? Below, well below, below, at, and above, basically. Again, this probably took them far less time than the ones you're familiar with. But what I was mentioning earlier is something that no one else can do. And right, this is that open-ended or open response. Aaron, you were on it earlier. Remember, you predicted that open-ended percentage. I am going to go over here and I'm going to click something that says student thinking. So remember, performance level data, student thinking reports. So when I click on student thinking, now what our system is going to be able to do is give you key insights to a domain that is extremely important for the next few weeks or right ahead of us on the roadmap. And let's go ahead and get ahead of this problem and provide key insights to a specific domain where we can have those instructional next steps ready to go. So if you haven't been reading the screen, I will zoom in just a little bit more for you as well. So what you're seeing is we are applying the knowledge of addition and subtraction to solve result unknown story problems. And you can see that there were 4 different items. So question 2, 9, 13, and 17 on this assessment really dove into this key insight. And what we were able to do is group students based on their thinking. If you remember the 4 students that had wildly different answers on how many flowers there are, we're taking that thinking and we're really understanding, okay, not a decision tree. Do they know it or not know it? But if they don't know it, what were they doing? And so here's 4 different groups of students or 4 different buckets that we've put them in. And I have about 16 of my students that were able to apply their understanding of addition and subtraction to accurately solve a result to an unknown story problem. And notice when I clicked on that, we actually have a recommendation. This is a resource at point of view. So you can see right here, it says View Center. So maybe for these students, if I click on View Center, this is something where I could take those students and they could work on strengthening that skill. For example, you can see that this skill right here is students are going to take turns generating numbers and placing counters on the board. And they are going to be able to work in a center, maybe while you're pulling other groups. That resource is at point of use in the reporting. I have to repeat that. If I go back to my reporting, I clicked on this group and there's the resource. So what about students that are maybe misinterpreting? So like, for example, right here, students misinterpret the underlying structure. When I click on that student, this is providing me with a completely different resource. And I think it's really important to understand the difference between the 2 resources that just popped up. My first group, you notice that 80%, they got the question right. So the center makes way more sense for them to have small group or working in pairs where they're just strengthening a skill. Whereas these students down below, they did not get it correct. So this is giving me a resource where I can pull small groups and say, hey, I'm going to work with, and it is a fake student, it says honey, but I'm going to pull honey and I'm going to work with them on a small group mini lesson. So if I click mini lesson, you're going to see right here that I have a resource where maybe I go to my kidney table and I pull these students over and I work with them on this small group mini lesson. And these mini lessons, we have them for all the different types of skills. If I were to go back to my reporting, this student needs this mini lesson, but if I click on the other one, notice a different mini lesson just popped up. So these are skill-based mini lessons where I can pull those small groups. It's more explicit. It works in a 3-step model. There's a teacher's facing view so that you know how to administer these mini lessons. And there's also this student facing view. This is a print resource that you would put in front of those students. And it goes through a model review, a guided practice, and a check for understanding. And so again, what I love about this is you've administered that beginning of your assessment, and you actually have instructional recommendations or now what's on how to support, strengthen, and stretch your students based on the data that's feeding into the reports. Now, one thing to take note of too that I just think is so incredible, this was just one example of some key insights. But let's just say I wanted to look at all of the items that were assessed on this assessment. So I click on all items, and you can see right here, these are all the questions that were taken on this assessment. And maybe I want to look at, let's just say item 11. I can see the standard that's tied to it. And when I click on that item analysis, I can see all the different ways that students answered this problem. You can see the student names. I promise these are they are fake students, but it's real data. I promise I didn't teach a bunch of fruits and vegetables, but you could see their different answers here and the different ways that they answered this question. So what do I do if I want to get extra support? Maybe I'm seeing that, wow, I had 9 different groups of buckets here that students fell into based on just one question about how many more trucks are there than airplanes. I can actually click on this go to activity page. And when I do that, we're going to provide, just like we did in the reports, we're going to provide resources on how to support, strengthen, and stretch those students right here from that report. So again, mini lessons, a center recommendation, or maybe you have your high flyers that all got that right and you're trying to support them. You even have extension opportunities to really push them towards those DOK3, DOK4s. Again, the most important thing here is it's easy to find what you need when you need it. So every single item in the assessment has the ability to grab these resources as well. You can even see some additional supports that we provide, things like fluency practice. If you want to progress monitor students on their fluency, or you want them to have game-based skill practice on a device, that would be Math Adventures. So again, these are all at point of use. Now, there is one other resource, and let me put this back up on the screen here. There's another resource that might be a recommendation that you would see called Boost Personalized Learning. And this is something that when students maybe need more individualized, throw some headphones on, or it's after school or at home, this is skill-based practice that is targeted towards those skills that they're struggling in. So another recommendation that you might see in your reports is this personalized learning. And what it does is it really provides students with a built-in tutor and scaffolded supports real time. I went ahead and I grabbed a third grade example since we were looking at third grade earlier. And there's a few things that I just like to point out on this screen. So if specific students are being recommended to use a specific skill, for example, students struggling on creating scaled bar graphs, you can assign just to a group, a student, or the whole class this personalized practice. And there's something I think it's really important that I want you to see here. So students are going to complete screens 2 and 3, and we're going to figure out a baseline of their depth of knowledge here. If students are successful with screens 2 and 3, they're actually going to skip screens 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 and move right into some additional practice around that skill. For those that are struggling with screens 2 and 3, they are going to get targeted intervention support with our built-in tutor real time. And that built-in tutor is going to provide some great data around how students are thinking. So maybe I am over here creating my own scaled bar graph. And then I can get some immediate, what we call responsive feedback based on how the assessment is being taken. Now, I don't know if you noticed this, but it actually provided what we call conceptual processing. It actually provided some great feedback, but it was scaffolded. And I want to kind of point this out if you didn't notice it. It actually showed us visual feedback of our thinking first. Then it provided auditory feedback with the tutor. And then our tutor, which is named Spark then was highlighting areas in the problem that would have supported them readdressing or trying the problem again. So you can see right here, the student is, instead of just going, okay, on to the next one, now that we've provided that feedback, go ahead and try another time. All of this would also filter into a report. So you could see students that might have needed to go in that intervention pathway versus those that just went into additional practice. So I just want to kind of reframe this for a second. Once you get those reports, you're going to have the ability to see small group mini lessons, centers, extension opportunities, boost personalized practice, all in your instructional next steps. And if you are curious, if I were just to go back to my reports, here's my benchmarking right here. If I wanted to see students and how they were performing in the boost personalized practice, that would be right here, and there would be reports for that. And if you need detailed standards reports based on the beginning of year benchmarking assessments, or you're wanting to go into progress monitoring and see what those reports look like. And I do have an example. It is a screenshot, but you can kind of see right here. If you want to be able to see students between the BOY and MOY and how they're moving across with those different forms for progress monitoring for tier 2, tier 3, you can get that data as well. So to kind of summarize here before we just make sure there's no questions in the chat, I really hope that one, you realized that, oh my gosh, James's jokes are not that bad. But two, that with mCLASS math, you're getting what everyone else can do. Performance level data. You're going to be able to see those predictors on how students might do on a state assessment. You're going to get those composite scores, which we all know and love. And you know what? I didn't even mention this. Maybe you want to look at those composite scores, send them home. You have a fantastic Home Connect letter. I had this all popped up and didn't even click on it. So if you need to send parents, or you're trying to have IEP meetings, or you're just doing goal setting, these are great reports that you have. This is just one student's example. But what I, again, love about this, if you go back to other systems, is sometimes we just give you a number and we don't even know what the number means. We actually can show you what a student is struggling with and the concepts behind those domains. So again, you're getting the same type of levels of data that you would see, those performance level or performance-based numbers that everyone else can do, but we're doing it in a far less time. Students actually don't have a bunch of anxiety taking these assessments because of the time, because of the all the accessibility features that are in there. And two, you as a teacher are getting far much more depth around what your students know and don't know because of those types of questions we're asking. So go all the way back to how Erin had that incredible guess of 45%, but she was in her DeLorean and she realized we were going to strip away A, B, C, and D. With those open-ended responses, you are able to get a lot more insights. And so when you have that targeted support, like small group mini lessons, just to give you an example, the resource is meaningful for the students. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it back over to Nathan, who kicked us off. But if there are any questions in the chat, please throw them in there. And we appreciate all the time you've given us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, James. I'll just start by saying we've been talking about mCLASS now in districts across sort of the Northeast corridor here for the last 18 months. And one of the big things that we're hearing from customers who are currently implementing this and using this is the power truly of that idea of the asset-based approach in assessment. How are we leveraging students' existing strengths to help them close any gaps in instruction or skills that they may have? And something that is pretty unique out there within the market, and something that has been very well received by administrators as well as classroom practitioners alike. So we'd love to show you more about that, and help you understand what that looks like in the context of core instruction, as well as supporting your kiddos throughout your MTSS structure. So we really appreciate your time today. I think Aaron has a question here in the chat. When will be a demo available for middle school students? James, when can we start talking about mCLASS math for middle school?
Yeah, great question. So K5 is basically, we're in full year here, and 6-8 is really ready for back to school 26-27. But you are able to start seeing the beginning of your assessments today. So as far as having the full on scope of a full BOI, MOI, and EOI, 26 back to school 26-27 would have all of the bells and whistles that you just saw here.
Yeah, great question, Aaron. Tony, any skills covered in the benchmarking connected to current grade, or are they a prerequisite knowledge base?
Fantastic question. A little bit of both. A little bit of both. So there's definitely prerequisite skills, but also, and again, something we can provide in a nice document, but we also are making sure that we're assessing on what we think on our scope and sequence and major scope and sequences, what your first month and a half to two, the skills that they should need to be able to be successful for basically units 1 and unit 2 of your core program. So there is a little bit of both. And if we did provide that data for, if you want to reach out to us, Tony, you could see them far more detailed what skills those are for each one of those BOIs.
Yeah, BOI is incredibly useful, Tony, as you know, being a Desmos user. BOI is incredibly useful to identify what skills they may not be entering that grade level with, but also how we can leverage those assets that each of those students brings to the table to work to propel that learning as we move forward. So that's a great question. Aaron says, regarding insights, James, students, how do we identify kiddos who may be on track for accelerated learning? Can we utilize benchmark data for that?
Yeah, so there's a few indicators that I would look at. One, if we are seeing well above on their composite score, for one, and the higher the number, the better. Two, when you're looking at the student thinking reports and you're actually looking at the analysis of those, if you're consistently seeing, as a teacher, I don't just like to take the raw data and that number. I usually like to look at the student thinking reports for each item and look at the depth of those responses. So you can actually look at a specific student and kind of see, okay, for these 28 questions, these were, let's just say we're talking about third grade, you would actually be able to see, sorry, I got distracted by the chat there. Even though there may be a third grade student, they might be already utilizing, let's just say, terms like arrays, whereas more of a fourth grade term, but they're looking at rows and columns in third grade and already using that advanced thinking. Whereas, again, back to a traditional multiple choice assessment, we're not going to actually be able to identify even like the language that students are using. So I would, one, take the composite scores. That would be my first. And then two, really looking at the student thinking reports. And if you have students that you think are on that trajectory, I would really look more deeply into the actual thinking of that student. And that would actually create a great use case for you if you were trying to propel a student into that pathway. And of course, the Home Connect reports would be great too, because you'd see their depth of knowledge around the domains.
Yeah, thanks, James. Devin, nice to see your name pop up in the chat here. Devin asks, how did we go about organizing the standards and deciding which standards we're going to assess? Are those based off of Common Core? Do we have the ability to plug in state standards, things like that?
So yes and no. Really, just they looked at the major concepts and skills across a national number. But yeah, Common Core would probably be the best way I could describe it to you if you were looking at like apples to apples here. But You wouldn't see a disparaging, if you were at your own state standard, you wouldn't see a disparaging difference between those skills and concepts and when they might fall on your scope and sequence, because it's such a large testing window between a BOY and an MOY.
Yeah. Yeah, we absolutely have alignments to every state standard that you would need, but again, it's more about a skills assessment and determining what gaps in instruction may have occurred leading up to that benchmarking window and what we can focus on moving forward. So, but Devin, yeah, we can align to every state standards. Okay.
Aaron, I'm with you. I am the creeper dad that puts this in front of my parents, or my kids, just because I'm like, what I see coming home isn't actually enough information for me. So I'm sure they love me for that, right?
Aaron talking about STAR here too, James, just a drastically different assessment style, right? One's computer adaptive, one is not computer adaptive. And so again, just really leveraging that asset-based approach there and how we can take advantage of what those kiddos know and leverage that for future learning and to use that as a springboard.
Yeah, and I just want to piggyback on that too. Sometimes if I do have any primary teachers or those that are working with K2, I get this question often, and I always just want to come back and make sure uh, you could put this in front of any kinder, they can do it. The way that each assessment is different in front of students. So a kinder, all they see is the numerical values of 0 through 9 that are already auto-populated on the bottom of the screen if they need to use those tools, and it auto reads to them, unlike a third grade assessment where it doesn't. And so the assessments do live and breathe differently based on the grade bands. And I just want you all to know that it's very easy for a kinder to do these, just like
Yeah, accessibility is critically important. We don't want to assess both math and reading in the math assessment. So those accessibility tools and things are there to really get at the core of the question. So it's a great call out. Aaron, fabulous question. What about gap to district or gap to state data there? And so mCLASS Math, and James, feel free to jump in here too. mCLASS Math is K5 is in its first full iteration of being rolled out nationally, and so we went through extensive field testing of this assessment over the course of the last 24 months, and so we will absolutely have that data available starting next year. It's not available today, so we need to get a full year of assessment with a commercial release. But we have data from field trials and things, but we weren't able to do extensive and exhaustive field trials in all 50 states. So we're working on that, but available starting next school year.
Yeah, and just to add to that, in our admin reporting, actually as recent as last week, you'll be able to see some nationally normed data, but that's just only going to get stronger with the more use cases that come in. So.
Yeah, and if you're familiar with mCLASS Dibble's 8th edition, that assessment obviously has been around for 2.5, 3 decades and has tremendous and exhaustive vertical data and horizontal data for all of your kids in your districts and your states and things. And so we aim to get there just in due time. So starting fresh with the brand new version of mCLASS Math. So we appreciate your understanding there, Aaron. Thanks, and a great question. Any final thoughts? All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for your time. Hopefully, you're enjoying this nice, crisp fall day in your neck of the woods. We appreciate your time. We'll circulate this recording again so you can share with other folks in your district. We'd love for you to jump back in and reach out to us if you have additional questions or if you would want to learn more about what mCLASS Math or Boost Personalized Learning might look like for your district. Go ahead and respond to that webinar invitation. We'll get you pointed in the right direction for your Amplify account executive. Thanks again for your time, everybody. Have a great rest of your week.